How did Israel become a country 2,000 years after being conquered by Rome? To answer this, we need to go back to 70 AD. At this time, the Roman Empire had been occupying the Jewish homeland since 63 BCE. Many Jews, tired of the cruel oppression, began revolting against Rome under the leadership of Bar Kokhba. After months of fighting, Rome's future emperor, Titus, marched on Jerusalem, set fire to the temple, plundered it, and sent the remaining Jews in the land into exile, known as the diaspora. Once the conquest was over, Rome renamed the former Jewish homeland Palestina, or Palestine in English, renaming it after Israel's old enemies, the Philistines. For well over a century, empire after empire had control over the area, including the Byzantines, the Crusaders, and finally, the Ottoman Empire. It's worth pointing out that in 1906, a young Jewish man named David Ben-Gurion moved to the area. More on him later in the video. In October of 1914, the Ottoman Empire entered World War I on the side of Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Bulgaria. They all lost terribly. By the end of the war, the Ottoman Empire was forced to give up about 32% of its land, including Israel. After World War I, Allied leaders recognized the Jewish ancestral rights in the land and tasked Great Britain with creating the former Ottoman territory into the Jewish state it had once been, creating the British Mandate for Palestine. Take note that this was the first time the name Palestine had ever officially been used. This didn't go as planned. Under pressure from newly created Arab nations who didn't want a Jewish state in the first place, Britain tried to appease them by creating a two-state solution, splitting the land from north to south, with the bigger half going to the Arabs. In May of 1939, the British government issued the White Paper, which limited the amount of Jews allowed to immigrate to the land to 75,000 for the next 5 years. This came at a very bad time, considering the new tragedy just a few months away. On September 1st, 1939, war broke out in Europe once again. Germany, ruled by the Nazi Party, began to expand its power by invading most of Europe. The Nazis' racist leader, Adolf Hitler, set out to annihilate all Jews throughout the continent. And between 1939 and 1945, millions of Jews were sent to concentration camps where they would be put to death. Jews needed a place to go, and they needed it now more than ever. One of the first places that they turned to was the British Mandate for Palestine. Hitler was very against this idea, and even supported the Mufti at Jerusalem, who was the top Muslim leader in the region. The Mufti was known for being opposed to the idea of a Jewish state. The Mufti's nephew, Yasser Arafat, would cause more trouble for the Jews down the road. But that's a topic for another video. By 1945, however, Germany had lost the war, and in May of that same year, Germany's leaders officially surrendered to the Allies, but not before they had murdered 6 million Jews, more than half the entire Jewish population at the time. By this point, it was clear that a home had to be made for the Jews. To solve this, while still trying to appease the Arabs, the newly appointed UN decided to split up the British Mandate once again. In November of 1947, the UN created this partition plan. This was much less land than the Jews had originally been promised. While on the heels of the Holocaust, however, they didn't have much of a choice and accepted. The Arab nations, on the other hand, rejected it. On November 29th, the partition plan was voted on by the UN, with 33 countries voting yes, 13 voting no, and 10 abstaining. On May 14th of 1948, 2 years after World War II, the president of the Jewish People's Council, David Ben-Gurion, stepped out of his car and walked into the Tel Aviv Museum, along with 24 other members. By this point, Arab nations were getting ready to invade the new Jewish state as soon as it was created. The British, deciding that they had lost control of the situation, were leaving that same day. To avoid British interference or an early Arab invasion, the meeting was not largely publicized. The meeting's purpose was simple: to declare sovereignty of a Jewish state. At about 4 p.m., Ben-Gurion read from Israel's Declaration of Independence over a live radio broadcast. The document listed the reasons for declaring statehood, including the Jewish political and historical rights to the land. After the reading, the 400 guests invited quickly began to applaud. Once the council members finished signing the document, reporters were allowed to ask questions. When Ben-Gurion encountered a British reporter, he simply said, "You see, we did it." After nearly 2,000 years in exile, after empire after empire of having control over their land, the Jewish state of Israel was finally reborn.